Welcome to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum in Prescott, Arizona. My special guest today is Dr. Paul Andrew Hutton. Dr. Hutton is currently the Tate Chair of Western History and Interim Curator of the Buffalo Bill Museum at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West in Cody, Wyoming. He is an American Western cultural military historian, an award-winning author on the New York Times bestseller list currently, with his new book just out this end of this summer, The Undiscovered Country, Triumph, Tragedy, and the Shaping of the American West. Paul, welcome to the show.
Well, thanks so much for having me, Stuart. It's great to be here.
Well, Paul, you are a well-traveled historian these days. I know that your home is currently in Cody, Wyoming, where you are working as the interim curator of the Buffalo Bill Museum at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West. But you are on the road a little bit right now, taking history on the road. And, I understand as we talked before the show that your latest book, is it your 14th book, is doing very well currently?
It is. It just went into its fourth printing and hit the New York Times bestseller list, which is a rarefied atmosphere to be in. And really connecting with readers, which is great. That's what you hope to do when you write. And folks seem to find it both informative and entertaining. And that's the goal.
Well, and you've been in Cody. Did you move up to Cody earlier this year from Albuquerque, which is your long-term home and residence as the distinguished professor of history at the University of New Mexico?
Yes, I taught at the University of New Mexico for 40 years. 7 years before that, I was at Utah State University. So got out of the professor business and am now a museum curator, which is great fun and just loving Cody, Wyoming. It's like going back in time to go to this western rural town of 10,000 people, and it's just wonderful up there. The museum, of course, is a world-class museum. 5 different museums under one roof. I run the Buffalo Bill portion, but we also have a Plains Indian Museum, Firearms Museum, a Natural History Museum, and a wonderful art museum and research library as well. So just a great facility about 50 miles outside of Yellowstone.
Well, it's truly spectacular, and I had the fortune to visit with you and Tracy and your wonderful museum staff and the folks at the McCracken Library in early September. It was my first trip, and I felt like a pilgrim walking through the gates and the doors of the beautiful Buffalo Bill Center of the West. It truly is, outside of Washington, D.C., I call it the Smithsonian of the West. It's in under one roof. It's just a magical place for anyone that's interested in American history, the West, and its cultural and natural history. I could spend literally weeks in there, just going from exhibit to exhibit and spending time and reflecting on the past and the present and the future that is can be discovered there in the museum.
It's magical, and it does take quite a bit. Excuse me, quite a bit of time to get through it. We sell 2-day passes, because it takes that long to get through it. I first went up there in 1968.
Is that right?
In a Volkswagen bus, doing the Discovery trip of America after graduating from high school. With a couple of buddies of mine, and fell in love with it then. And I was on the board for about 20 years. And when this opening became available, they asked me to step in, and I thought, well, why not? Talk about undiscovered country. It was a whole new beginning, starting over here rather late in life.
Well, I know that when we walked through the museum together on that, when we were up there for the James Ersfeld Symposium of the Western Writers of America, we walked through the Buffalo Bill Museum, and you kind of walked us through the exhibits. And as we talked about the items and the history and the interpretation of Buffalo Bill Cody and his life and his family, it was for me, and I guess going to go back to this metaphor of undiscovered country, it provides an interpretation, his life, on the growth of the American West from the mid 19th century into the new modern world of the 20th century before World War I. It was kind of a remarkable journey as you walk through the museum and start to reflect on Buffalo Bill's life and America's transformation from kind of pre-Civil War era to this modern, empire.
Well, he's a fabulous character in that way, and he's the final character, of course, in my book. He's born in 1846. He dies in 1917. Of course, he's a young kid on the frontier. He's a Pony Express rider, then becomes a Civil War soldier for the Union Army. His father died, in fact, giving an anti-slavery speech in Kansas. And then, of course, he becomes famous as a buffalo hunter for the railroad. He wasn't part of the great slaughter of the buffalo. He opposed that and he condemned it, but he was hunting, for food on a horseback with a single-shot rifle, Lucretia Borgia is what he called it, and then killed buffalo to feed the workers on the railroad, and then became an Army Scout, won the Congressional Medal of Honor, or received it. Folks don't like to have the term won. Received the Congressional Medal of Honor for his heroics in the Indian Wars, and got discovered by a writer named Ned Buntline, went on the stage and became quite a national celebrity. And then in 1883, of course, created his Wild West show, which toured the world for a quarter of a century and really informed Americans as well as people all around the world what America was about. The show itself was kind of a pageant. Cowboys, Indians, the attack on the Deadwood stage, historical motifs, rodeo extravaganza. And it captured the imagination of the whole world. And that's how people came to think of Americans. And, everyone wanted to be a cowboy. In fact, the cowboy had been a pejorative term before.
Right.
Cody turned it into an iconographic image.
The Knight of the American West.
Absolutely. And then, the Marlboro Man in the 20th century. And still, of course, we're seeing today with the success of Yellowstone and other television shows that the West is back strong, and really still embraced by Americans as representative of who we are, what makes us distinct, what makes us different from other people around the world.
I love that. And we're going to take a quick break here and thank our sponsors, but I want to come back and we're going to talk more about the undiscovered country. And I love the metaphor of you graduating from high school and taking this journey of discovery across the West, because I think there's layers there that we can talk about that ultimately have resulted in your new book, The Undiscovered Country. We'll be right back on Arizona Roundup.
Since 1995, Helkin & Horn Ad Agency has helped local businesses stand out and succeed from print and radio to websites and social media. You see, their talented team crafts your brand's message and offers a plan to get it out into the community. Do you want results backed by 30 years of experience? Visit AZAD, that's azadagency.com, and do it today. Helkin and Horn, where their slogan is "Be Known."
Welcome back to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum in Prescott, Arizona. And my special guest today is Paul Andrew Hutton, who is a distinguished professor of history emeritus at the University of New Mexico and currently the Tate Chair of Western History and interim curator of the Buffalo Bill Museum at the Buffalo Bill Center of the West in Cody, Wyoming. And before the break, Paul, you and I were talking a little bit about this road trip you took in 1968 across the country from Indiana, where you were raised. Is that right?
That's right. Yeah, my buddies Steve Horowitz and Don Fork and I borrowed Don's dad's VW bus, and off we went to discover America, literally listening to that Simon and Garfunkel song, America, on the way. And the boys all wanted to go to Vegas. I wanted to go to Custer Battlefield and the Buffalo Bill Center of the West and the Black Hills, and that's what we did. It just was a great trip. Just a great trip.
I just, there is nothing like seeing America from the ground up, from the highway, from a road trip like that. And at that point, 18 years old, out of high school, college is in front of you. Had you realized that history was going to be your muse, or even the American West, or did it really get defined on that, let's call it, journey of discovery?
Well, I had always loved the West. It's all Walt Disney's fault. I saw Davy Crockett on television back in the 1950s and got hooked on history through that. And of course, I wasn't alone. You know, millions of baby boomers bought coonskin caps and were singing that song back in the day. But so I always loved history, and I always loved the West, even though we traveled all around the world. My dad was in the Air Force. And I was going to go to college and become a lawyer. And I thought, you know, I could become a lawyer, I'll be rich, and I'll retire at 50 and write books. But then I thought to myself, well, why don't I just write books and I'll become a college professor? Because the book business is a tough business. You need a day job. And indeed, it all worked out great. I did have a wonderful career as a teacher. Thinking back, I was very popular. I had huge classes. I think I probably taught 15,000 kids, you know, over the years.
Wow, that's amazing.
You know, you do make an impact, and you'll run into people, and they'll say, you know, in fact, at the book signing last night, 3 of my students were there from 20 years ago. You know, I didn't remember them, but they remembered me and told me, you know, it was the best class they ever took and all that sort of thing. It's, you know, that's very rewarding. There's nothing actually more rewarding, I think, in life than being a teacher and touching people's lives. You do the same thing with a book, though. You're trying to touch people's lives. You're trying to teach, you know, just in a different format. And you do the same thing in the museum world. It's different. In fact, I was telling the audience last night, I did a book gig in Santa Fe, and it was filmed by C-SPAN TV about book TV. And I was telling folks that the hardest writing I'm doing in my life is writing museum captions. That is really tough.
Captions are challenging, right?
Yeah. I've written for TV. I've written for popular magazines. I've written books. I've even written a movie script, you know, but museum captions, that's serious writing.
An anecdote from years ago, I was working for Bob Early at Arizona Highways Magazine, and I mentioned to him that I had an idea maybe someday that I'd work for National Geographic. And he said, well, what do you want to do for them? I said, well, you know, I want to work for the magazine. I said, but are you going to be a map specialist or a caption specialist? And he kind of went on with this list. And I said, caption specialist, what's that? He goes, oh, there are men and women who work for National Geographic whose expertise is just writing the captions. And, of course, I was writing a lot at Arizona Highways, a lot of captions, but not until I worked for True West and Bob Bell did I realize that the art form of the caption, and whether you're writing 1,000 words or 300 words, if you have to write 35 words and get your point across, something different from the story, the caption writing is an art form.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, speaking of an art form from a literary perspective, I really am intrigued on this road trip of yours going west, and I think that there's something special about growing up in Indiana that had to inform you, the professors that you work for, because Indiana's there on the edge of it's the early American frontier in the Ohio River Valley. And looking east and west, your new book on the Undiscovered Country really does bridge the American story from the Atlantic to the Pacific and Canadian border to Mexico.
Well, the book starts in 1755 with Braddock's defeat. It ends in 1890 with the Wounded Knee Massacre. And in between, I tell the story of the frontier movement from the east to the far west through 7 lives, and lives that I picked for both geographic and chronological reasons. Tough choices because I had to leave a lot out. Even though it's a big book and covers a lot of territory. But I chose 7 lives, 4 very famous frontiersmen, Boone, Crockett, Carson, Cody, 3 native leaders, Red Eagle, who led the Creek Indians in the War of 1812, Mangus Colorados, the great Apache leader, and of course Sitting Bull, the famous Lakota leader. And through their lives, I weave the entire story of westward expansion, both in terms of the triumphant American conquest, but also the kind of tragedy of what happens to Native American peoples and the environmental consequences of the European invasion of the American West.
Well, it's a very dramatic book, and it's one of those that really, as you get into it, you're just. It reminds me a little bit of if you're an admirer of his of William Manchester's Glory in the Dream. You really set up this story that then once you're into it and you're walking alongside these famous men and their roles in creating America, the American story, in victory and defeat. You really do get a greater understanding of the triumph and the tragedy of the American story.
Well, that's one of the reasons I picked this biographical approach as an organizing principle. I really wanted to use lives for both, great overarching story, but also to personalize it and bring it down to a level that everyone could identify with. I mean, whether we're talking about a Native American leader like Mangus Colorados, or we're talking about, Kit Carson, their personal stories, their trials, their tribulations, their triumphs, their tragedies, help to allow us to identify, I think, with them and to see how their lives shaped, the greater American story. Because the book is really the story of America. I see the first great era of American history being the story of the West. That's why, my book ends in the 1890s, really around 1900 with Buffalo Bill's Wild West show. But it is tried to tell a greater story of how the American frontier shaped our national character, shaped our identity as a people. And I hope I accomplished that. I seem to have. People are responding very well.
Well, I think they have, and we're gonna take a quick break here and thank our sponsors again, and come back and talk a little bit more about some of the, I think, surprises that you discovered as you were on your journey of writing this book. We'll be right back on Arizona Roundup.
At Foothills Bank, they're not just about banking. They're about people, community, and building futures. Whether you're managing personal finances, growing your business, planning for retirement, or buying your dream home, their friendly team is there to guide you every step of the way. Stop by your local Foothills Bank today. It's more than just banking. It's a partnership for success. Foothills Bank is a division of Glacier Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
For over 45 years, Blind Brothers Arizona has been the heart of window style in Prescott. From blinds, shutters, drapes, they will custom design and install with expert precision, tailored just to you, whether it's for your home or your office. You can trust the name that locals rely on. Visit blindbrothersarizona.com today or call them at 928-776-1845. Once again, that's 928-776-1845 for a free consultation. Blind Brothers Arizona, the original since 1979.
Welcome back to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum. And my special guest today is my friend Paul Andrew Hutton, who is just published a New York Times bestseller, The Undiscovered Country, Triumph, Tragedy, and the Shaping of the American West. This is a big book. It's a big book for America. It's published by Dutton. And Paul, before the break, we were talking a little bit about the style in which you wrote the book, your attempt to write the story of America from the late 18th century to the beginning of the 20th century through, these biographical profiles of these remarkable American leaders of all different scopes and backgrounds. Talk to me a little bit about some surprises that you discovered. I'm sure you were familiar with most of these men. We're talking about Daniel Boone, Red Eagle, the great Creek leader, Davy Crockett, Mangus Colorados, the Apache leader, Kit Carson, Sitting Bull, the great Lakota Sioux leader, and William Buffalo Bill Cody. Is there anything that, when you got back into reading and researching these men, that you discovered something or were surprised by something that you didn't realize you would find in researching their lives to write this book?
Well, writing a book is a journey of discovery in its own right. And books take on, even nonfiction books, take on a life of their own. For instance, um, I became captivated with the role of George Washington in westward expansion and his role in bringing on the French and Indian War, and part he played in Braddock's defeat. And Daniel Boone was there as well. One of the things I wanted to talk about was the important role that the American West and the expansion into the West played in the coming of the American Revolution, which is on everyone's mind these days as we approach this big anniversary. And Boone, in many ways, was the westernmost founding father. He's kind of an American Moses leading the people into the wilderness, of course, struggling to establish a new country. I mean, it's new to him. And that's part of what the title is about, The Undiscovered Country. It's from Hamlet's soliloquy. His undiscovered country is death, of course, that he's talking about.
Right.
But, obviously, America had been discovered by millions of people before Daniel Boone ever crossed the Cumberland Gap. But it was new to him. And that's what I'm trying to get at for all these people, whether you're with Boone going up the Cumberland Gap, or you're on the Oregon Trail or the Santa Fe Trail, or you're going to California, you're going up on the Oregon Trail, to the Willamette Valley. It's new to you. You're on a journey of personal discovery. And I hope the book is a journey of personal discovery for people. But back to what I would say before, I was just amazed at how important the role of the West was to George Washington, to Benjamin Franklin, to the founding fathers, and the key role it played in bringing on the American Revolution. Boone was central to that. He lost 2 sons, a brother and a brother-in-law, in the struggle for Kentucky. And then, of course, once he has made the place safe, hundreds of thousands of people move in. He has no place there. He said he wanted elbow room. Moved out to Missouri and to spend the final few years of his life. An amazing character. Followed, of course, by Davy Crockett, by Kit Carson, by Buffalo Bill, all of whom became famous frontiersmen. But also, the story centers on the folks who already lived there, Red Eagle and the Creek Indians, their struggle in Alabama and Mississippi to retain their homeland, which is doomed, of course. Mangus Colorados leading the Apaches, the only great Apache chief who united all of the Apache bands against the American invader, and was himself the victim of American perfidy, just a terrible betrayal on the part of the American government. And then Sitting Bull, the great Lakota, who of course fought Custer at Little Bighorn and then toured with Buffalo Bill. And
right. The ironies of ironies.
And that story, I think, Undiscovered Country is full of those complex ironies. And that's something I wanted to get at. I mean, every story there, all my 7 protagonists are heroic. And it's a romantic story. I confess to being a hopeless romantic when it comes to the West. I love the West. I love America. Love the whole story. And so I hope that comes across. But also it's tempered by the tragedies that are associated. It is the birth of a nation. Birth can be very painful. And there are consequences. And it's sort of like Oliver Cromwell. When he was having his portrait made, said, warts and all. And that's what this story is. It's not a revisionist history. It's I hope, a grand narrative history in a literary style that makes it a page turner for people.
Well, I think that it's a beautiful story, and one that is filled with the pathos of tragedy and the inspiration of triumph, and also I think as Americans we can find ourselves in this book, depending on no matter where you live in this country, or if you're a new resident, if you lived here for many, many generations. I think that as I read it, you can see yourself in the book. You can start to visualize your own family when they arrived here in this country, and their own struggles to find their place in America. And I think that there is a little bit of that restlessness that still is in the DNA that leads people to seek out a little bit more open space and find a place to rediscover themselves in our grand country and out in the American West.
The much genius of America is the ability to reinvent yourself over and over. And that's what the West offered to people. And you could escape the past if you wanted to and embrace a whole new future. And we certainly see that in characters, like Daniel Boone, like Davy Crockett, certainly Buffalo Bill, but even other characters like Sam Houston, who had suffered scandal and loss back in Tennessee, and then goes to Texas, reinvents himself, and founds a new empire essentially.
Right. Well, we're going to take a quick break here, Paul, and come back and talk a little bit about where your journey is going to go here in the next few years, and maybe there's another book out there. We'll be right back with Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum.
Hello once again, this is Stan the Radio Man. I'm the founder, maybe the creator, and certainly the recruiter for the Cowboy Spirit Radio Network, and we're hoping that we'll get you on the radio in the coming year, and you will be a part of this going and growing adventure in telling the stories of the West, and perhaps even helping to save Western civilization. Well, this is a great program. As I oftentimes say, I learn more here by accident than most places by design. What a wonderful story that we're getting, and we've still got a little bit more to go. By the way, pretty soon the Halloween holiday will be trick-or-treating, and then guess what happens? Yeah, Thanksgiving for sure, but then we start thinking about the Christmas holidays. And so I just want to remind you that Charlotte Hall is not just a museum. It's a place where people come together for family reunions, for celebrations. It's a place where there are performances. It's not just a thing where there's something on the wall for you to look at. It's a real place for you and your family. And there will be a variety of Christmas celebrations in Prescott at the Charlotte Hall Museum, festivals that go along with the season. So you keep in tune not only to this program, but as you're thinking about maybe family coming and being with you, what are you going to do for the holiday celebrations? Make sure you check out charlottehallmuseum.org. And you'll find out that there will be wonderful things to be thankful for. And in the season of Christmas and Advent and Happy Hanukkah, there will be things for all of us to do. Right here in Prescott, Arizona. That's right, the mile-high cowboy city and everybody's favorite hometown. Now, here we go. Round it up. Final part of the story with Stuart and Paul, as they tell you more about the Western way.
Welcome back to Arizona Roundup with Stuart Rosebrook at Charlotte Hall Museum. And my special guest today has been Paul Andrew Hutton, and we're having a fantastic time here talking about Western history, our passion for the American West, his new book, The Undiscovered Country, Triumph, Tragedy, and the Shaping of the American West, recently published by Dutton. It's in its fourth printing. It's a New York Times best-selling book. And but I think we can't overlook the fact that there's something very special happening this year for you, Paul, as a longtime member, former executive director, and president of the Western Writers of America. We have recently announced that you are the Owen Wister Award winner for 2026, which is the highest award and achievement that can be given to a Western writer by the WWA. and you'll be inducted into the Western Writers Hall of Fame next September at the McCracken Library in Cody. And as Vice President of Western Writers of America, I want to give you incredible congratulations. It's truly remarkable, I think, capstone on your career, but maybe just the beginning for a new renaissance in your writing with this publishing of this book this year and this award.
Well, thanks, Stuart. It's a great award, of course, and I've long been a member of Western Writers. I've won 6 Spur Awards over the years. My very first book, Phil Sheridan and His Army, won a Spur Award, and it was the same year that Larry McMurtry won for Lonesome Dove. So that was a big year, and I met McMurtry. I met McMurtry at the award ceremony, so that was a big thrill, and I got to know him better later. But yes, it's I often wondered when I was a bit younger than I am now. Is it best to have success when you're young? And I've had considerable success throughout my life, but this new book, and now with the Western Writers Owen Wister Award, I mean, it's a pretty heady year. What's the old song? Everything's coming up roses, and this is indeed kind of a culmination. But you're right. I see it also as a new beginning. The success of this book is going to give me opportunities, for future writing as well, that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so that's very exciting. And how great to get this award from an organization I have, devoted many years of service to and just love so much.
Well, it's going to be a wonderful opportunity for everyone to gather together in St. Louis in June for our annual convention, which I think is, in many ways, it's going to be very meaningful that the WWA convention is in St. Louis during our AZ250 as the gateway to the West, as we celebrate Western writing in all genres, and have the Owen Wister Award ceremony on that Saturday night at the conference. And but before then, you are on almost a rock and roll journey here across the country and traveling around the country, giving talks and meeting people. And you're even coming to Prescott, Arizona. You're coming to Charlotte Hall Museum January 10th. And that same week, you're going to speak to the Westerners organization here in Prescott. We're really looking forward to you being here, and also with your friend Paul Hedren on January 10th, 2026.
Yes, Paul has a new book coming out, Sitting Bull's War, which is about the Great Sioux War of 1876 from the native perspective, from Sitting Bull's perspective. I do a bit of that in my book. Paul will, of course, elaborate much more on it in his book, and we're looking forward, to coming out to Prescott, which is one of my favorite towns, and to your museum, which is one of the great museums in the American West.
Well, and Charlotte Hall Museum, Charlotte Hall herself, she is, we are just excited every day to help inspire new members. And also, like the Buffalo Bill Center of the West, we have a great namesake, someone who in her lifetime was out there every day inspiring people to discover their history, their heritage. He inspired our folks here in the Prescott area, including her friend Grace Sparks, to save some of our national treasures here. And she really was, in her own way, I would also say in her era, she was the Buffalo Bill of Arizona. She really was a very determined woman. She helped reinvent herself. She came west from Kansas to Arizona as a girl, and she embraced the culture and history and heritage and all it, the good, the bad, the ugly, and did everything she could in her lifetime to promote it and to save it and preserve it, and hoped that one day we would continue to be inspired by her work and bring that story to another generation, which I think you do in your book, The Undiscovered Country, Paul. And I think that you and I spoke earlier this year about the travails of the writer. Anyone who's ever written a book or a song or a screenplay knows that once you've completed it, you've done something truly remarkable. But it's that pain is then you can see what you've gained in creating this new book, and hopefully, with the move to Cody, it's inspiring to seek new titles and new inspiration for more writing.
Well, it sure is. Writing a book can indeed be a very painful experience, and this book was very difficult to write because I wanted it to be so good. I really worked at the style. I was inspired by writers like David Lavender, Walter Lord, Bernard DeVoto, so many, who came before David McCullough, and even modern writers, Peter Cousins, of course, Hampton Sides, who are doing so much to both entertain and inform people. And it's kind of missionary work. You want to,
most definitely,
you want to show people that history can be fun, and also inform them about why are we the way we are.
Mm-hmm.
Why are we having all the we're always having problems. I mean, everyone thinks we're so divided today. I graduated from high school in 1968, for heaven's sake. We were really divided then. So it's all a grand adventure. And I'm pretty much a Pollyanna on these things. And I think the future's bright. I think America kind of needs to reassess itself every few years. We're going through that right now. And I think we're on a great trajectory. And that trajectory comes out of our frontier origins. And as Frederick Jackson Turner pointed out so well in 1893, this is what shaped us as a people, gave us our unique, distinctive character, made us different. And it's how people from all over the world, of all races and ethnicities, religions, could come together to form something unique that the world has never seen. There's a reason that we have a border crisis. That's because millions of people want to come to this country because it's so wonderful. I used to tell my students that if you're born in this country, or you somehow get to come to this country like I did, as a adopted German kid, you won the lottery. You won the lottery. And the story of the undiscovered country is ultimately a triumphant story. It places us in a position by 1917, when Buffalo Bill Cody dies, to change the world through 2 world wars where we defeat Nazi fascism, Japanese imperialism, and then, of course, defeat the Soviet Union and communism in the struggle for freedom around the world. Sometimes we've made terrible mistakes, but I at least see the trajectory as a positive one, and the undiscovered country reflects that.
Well, it's very inspiring, Paul, and I think that anyone who picks up the Undiscovered Country is going to find that inspiration of the American dream, the American spirit, is going to rediscover our grand history in its triumph and its tragedies, and I recommend everyone pick up the Undiscovered Country to re-inspire themselves. And I hope that the next time we're on the show, that as you travel across America talking about the Undiscovered Country, Paul, that we'll hear soon that you found new inspiration, because we're hungry for great writing, and we hope that your journey will take you to your next great book.
Well, I've got a couple more in mind, including perhaps a big biography of Buffalo Bill, now that I live in Buffalo Bill country. So, this journey isn't over yet at all.
That's great. Well, Paul, thank you very much for being on Arizona Roundup today, and I look forward to having you back as a guest very soon. And safe travels. Thank you very much, Paul.
Thank you, Stuart. Appreciate it.
And that's a wrap for this week on Arizona Roundup, and we'll see you next week. Thank you very much.